Hello, everyone, and thank you for the introduction. My name is Professor Atul Gokhale. By profession, I'm a chef, and I'm glad to be speaking today on one of the prestigious conferences which identifies spice routes in flux on the topic of navigating the global transformation and intercultural exchange. I'll just give a small anecdote over here. When Mr. August Saptano, the ex-consul general in the Mumbai Indonesian embassy, called me from his home country, I was not very clear as to why he would want to visit India and who are the people coming in along with him. However, to tell you very honestly, when the Negeri Rempah Foundation members visited our college, to discuss and advocate the topic of spice route in contemporary society, I was just taken aback. And I said, oh, I think this is something which is quite an interesting topic. And I am somebody who speaks, teaches, learns, and researches a lot in this. And so when the International Forum on Spice Routes offered to me coming in for this conference, I really like the outcome which they have created for this conference. Indonesia and South Asian countries, and especially India, have a very active role in the global community to open access, create dialogue, and build, taking from the old to new, relations of different communities at very local, regional, and international level. And I'm really glad to speak to all of you over here on this conference. And I would like to do a small presentation as my keynote address. And I've chosen a topic which is very close to my heart and a topic which I generally research on since I teach sociology and the anthropology of gastronomy to our students here. And in that, there is a area which I always like to talk about is the ancient spice routes. And today I'll be speaking more on the topic of spice routes and their influence on Indian cuisine. So allow me to present my presentation, and then I will take things forward from there. I'll do a share screen, full screen, and then I will begin. So as I mentioned, the topic for today's my presentation is spice routes and their influence on Indian cuisine. And it aligns with the topic of the forum, Navigating Global Transformation and Intercultural Exchange. When I stand in front of you to speak about the ancient spice route, a network of global connection that's shaped not only the world's economy, but also the culture and cuisines of nations, particularly in India. Through centuries of trade, migration, and exploration, the spice routes became basically the bridges between East and West, connecting people, cultures, and flavors. And it will not be an exaggeration to say that India was the fulcrum to all of this. So there's an historical approach to these spice routes, and India's role in the spice trade cannot be overstated. It was both a key producer and a hub of distribution thanks to its geographical location and the sheer diversity of spices. Just to go back, during those period of time in early post 3000 BCE, most of the trades was happening by ships. The spice routes date back to as early as 3000 BC, facilitate the trade of black pepper, turmeric, cinnamon, cardamom, and many more things. These were not mere commodities, but they were treasures and offered referred to as black gold for their value for people who would cherish or experiment on foods. Hence, Indian spices traveled through multiple routes, including overland through Central Asia and maritime routes through the Arabian Sea, reaching as far as the Mediterranean and the Europe. These routes carried more than goods, they carried culture, knowledge, and culinary practices, which are even at many a times in vogue today as well. So the spice routes from India to the Middle East and beyond were something which defined. And in fact, I will talk about the Oriental spice trade as well in my next slide. One of the most significant spice routes connected India to the Middle East from the port of Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Spices made their way to the ancient Arab civilizations. Some of the routes were also towards the Gujarat part, which is up north from the Indian coastline. The Arabs, particularly the traders from current Oman and Yemen, became intermediaries between India and the Mediterranean. This exchange was not just economic, but culinary also. For instance, the widespread use of cumin, as we call jeera in India, in Middle Eastern cuisine can be traced to its Indian origins. Spices like saffron, cardamom, and coriander can be traced back, transform both the Indian and the Middle Eastern cuisine landscape. So one of the major active trade routes was the spice route from the Middle East. And that really created something which was wonderful for all of us to see. I'll stop the share for a minute and re-record it from. As I was talking about the spices from and the spice trade from India to Middle East and beyond, there was another segment which was quite significant, which was the spices from Orient to India and India to Orient. Spice routes were not just one way. India also benefited from spices bought from other regions, including the Southeast Asia and China, especially clove and nutmeg, which originated in the Spice Islands, Maluku Islands, especially in present Indonesia, found a new home in the Indian kitchens. And it today is also used, especially in the areas where the nutmeg is quite popular. For example, one of the items in our Indian Maharashtrian cuisine, the nutmeg powder is added to one of the dessert dishes made out of hung curd. Similarly, the Chinese influence brought star anise and acacia, further enriching the Indian cuisine. These spices contributed to the formation of new regional dishes, leading to the layered and complex flavored associated with Indian food today. And that really has made a lot of addition to the current Indian requirement. So the trade was not just limited to sea routes from east to west or west to east in case of Orient spice trade route or the Middle Eastern spice trade route, but spices traveled within India from north to south and especially from south to east, south to north and west. Indian spice routes were not just basically for the internal consumption, but one of the remarkable examples of a spice which traveled widely within India is black pepper. Although native to the Western Ghats, black pepper became India's most exported spice. And it carried from Malabar coast, which is down south, present Kerala, to North India, transforming cuisines across regions. In South India, it is an integral ingredient in Chettinad cuisine, adding warmth and depth. You could see the picture over here. The kind of spice you can look at the Chettinad chicken, it is all from the pepper. The intra-country exchange of these spices exemplifies how spices influenced the regional cuisines. And if you see today in the contemporary India, regional Indian food has its own stake in terms of how they are looked at. Each one is dominated by the local ingredients, but overall there is a lot of spice which is imported from different parts to the local area which is there. So internal trade of spice was one of the areas of which is added to the richness of Indian cuisine. Uh, how they affected the regional cuisines was there was a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, transition from one part of India to the other. The sociological impact of these spices was reflected in India's diverse population, and it is found to be very profound. Regional cuisines in India are heavily defined by their use of spices. For example, and as you would see on the picture on the left-hand side, the in Bengal, mustard oil and mustard seeds dominate the palate, and they really use a lot of spice which is related to uh, the local fish, and the mustard is added to it. Whereas on the north, that is in Gujarat, today's Gujarat, the addition of sweetness from cinnamon and cloves balances the heat in dishes like the undio, which you see on the picture on the right hand side. And undio is a very specific dish made only in winters, since some of the vegetables, some of the root vegetables which are added are only found during the winter season. So these regional variations in spice use reflect not just the environmental factors, but also centuries of intercultural exchanges via the different spice routes which were in existence. Spice also became entwined with religions and cultural practices. Turmeric, instance, for example, is used in cooking, but also is used as a sacred ingredient in most of the Hindu rituals. Similarly, asafoetida, despite its pungency, became a staple in many vegetarian cuisines, particularly in the Jain cuisine and Brahmin cuisines, where garlic and onions were avoided or still avoided due to the regional beliefs. So, impact of these spices has been quite great in India in terms of its usage, and but then it all led to also the taboos in relation to spices as well. Despite the global exchange, not all foods in India were readily accepted in the Indian cuisine. And one of the important ingredient which was not accepted was the chili. Some ingredients were bought as a part of the Americans which arrived to India in 16th century via the Portuguese traders. They were initially met with resistance. Indian cuisine or Indian culinary traditions had been dominated by black pepper till then. But over time, chilies not only found acceptance, but because became a central to the Indian culinary identity, particularly in the areas of hot regions like Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, south of Maharashtra, where fiery fish curries and pickles which now reign supreme into the cuisines. On the other hand, certain foods like beef were restricted or were strictly avoided by large sections of Indian population, particularly Hindus. Yet in regions like Kerala and the northeastern states, beef consumption persisted, showing how local customs and global influences coexist in the Indian culinary culture. This balance between acceptance and resistance to foreign influences exemplifies the dynamic nature of the Indian food. Today, Indian food is a very varied part, and it has also had its own share of anthropological impact. The anthropological impact significance of spices extends beyond cuisines. Spices influenced India's social and cultural identity. During the height of the spice trade, the Indian spice producing regions gained prosperity, leading to the rise of powerful kingdoms such as the Cholas and the Chera dynasties, which conquered many parts of the oriental south of Asia, including the Indo. It was spread up to from Myanmar to Thailand to Indonesia and Malaysia. Moreover, the maritime spices routes fostered the exchange of ideas, philosophies, and religions. The arrival of Arab traders introduced Islam to the coastal regions of India, particularly in Kerala, leading to the establishment of a vibrant Muslim communities whose culinary traditions reflect a lot of fusion between the Arab and Indian flavors. This led to what I can talk about is the contemporary reflections on spice routes as of today. While the ancient spice routes may seem distant, their legacy continues to influence the global culinary landscape. Today, spices from India are used in kitchens across the world, from curry powders, which were very popular in England, to garam masala in the US. The current spice trade, though more streamlined and commercial, still carries the rich cultural heritage of these ancient roots. And that exactly is the purpose of our today's conference. The revival of interest in traditional spices and culinary heritage also reflect a growing global appreciation for the depth and the richness of the regional Indian cuisines. To conclude, as we gather here to discuss the importance of spice routes, we must remember that they represent more than historical trade networks. They are living legacies present in the flavors of our food, present in flavors of our cultures that developed around them, and the connections they created between people of Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, with India, maybe even to the other Orient side of China and Japan. In India, spices are not just ingredients, they are stories, identities, and traditions as they continue to evolve. As we look forward to reviving these ancient roots in contemporary terms, let us also celebrate the spice of life they continue to offer, connecting past and present in a flavorful dance of cultures. With this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for listening to me. And I'm sure as we go along, you would always have aspects of uh, maybe cultural exchange as we go forward and look into it. Thank you.